From cooling towers to boiler feed water, wastewater to drinking water, Pyxis Lab has technology to fit all of your water treatment applications. Our innovative solutions cater to industries ranging from fisheries to breweries and everything in between. With Pyxis Lab, you're not just getting products, you're gaining a partner committed to revolutionizing water treatment. Don't let outdated technology hold you back. Go to scalinguph2o.com/Pyxis. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/PYXIS. Pyxis, because water professionals deserve better. Hey there, Scaling Up Nation. It's Trace Blackmore here with a shout out to all the hardworking water treaters out there. You deserve a partner who's just as dedicated as you are. That's why I want to introduce you to my friends Sarah, Drew, Dave, and the rest of the crew at North Metal and Chemical Company. North Metal isn't just about delivering high-quality chemicals. They're about delivering exceptional support from experienced professionals who understand our industry inside and out. Their unmatched service means they're ready to ship your Northwest brand chemicals when you need them, no matter the challenge. With their commitment to small businesses and long-term partnerships, North Metal and Chemical Company is here to help you succeed every step of the way. Visit scalinguph2o.com/North today and learn how they can support your water treatment goals. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/North. North Metal and Chemical Company, serving the water treatment industry since 1921. Welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast, the podcast where we scale up on knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. I'm Trace Blackmore, your host. And Nation, I love hosting this podcast. Nation, I'm always looking for things to talk about on the podcast. I'm looking for things that might inspire you, that might get you to do something. And a couple weeks ago, I told you I saw the Goodyear blimp on my way in to the office, and we talked about that. Well, I actually heard this on the news the other day. So this week marks the 67th anniversary of the debut of the Leave It to Beaver television show. Now, that debuted on September 26th, 1957, and that was a show maybe some of you saw, maybe you haven't seen, but that was a show that people would have one television. They would gather around. They would watch television together. They would make watching television family time. And I'm not sure how much we do that anymore. I'm pretty sure that most of us don't wait for a show to come on anymore. I think we all stream anything that we might be watching. And the unfortunate thing is I don't think we're watching together anymore. I think everybody is sequestered on their own personal device, streaming whatever they want to consume. And the problem with that is we're not watching it together. We're not having an experience together. That doesn't allow us to have a conversation together. So one of the things that we try to do, and we don't do it all the time, but we do try to do it, is that we have family time and we will cook. Ideally, we will cook together. At the very least, while someone is cooking, that someone is normally me, by the way, we're having a conversation. And I love having my son help me in the kitchen. When we're both working on something, we just have such a good conversation. When we're focused on having the conversation, some of them are great, but I will tell you that when we're focused on something, all of those are great. So there's just something about that. And then being able to eat a meal that we all prepared together and have a conversation about what is going on in our lives. If you're not doing this on a regular basis, I encourage you to do so. Now, we're not perfect and we miss probably more than we have because everybody has such a busy life. Hayden's 18 now, so he's got so much going on, but we try at least a couple times a week that we are doing that. And that's one of the ways that we're trying to make up for the fact that it's not 1957 and we have so many distractions out there that how do we keep up with each other? How do we keep interest with each other? How do we help each other when people need help? And if we're not involved, we may not realize that they need help. So I'm talking about my family. Maybe it's a little bit different with you, but I think you get what I am trying to say. And it's my hope that you try to embed family time a couple of times, if not every week night. Nation, something else, speaking of weeks that is coming up, is Industrial Water Week. That is coming up October 6th. It's always the first full week of October. And Nation, we have so much in store for you for Industrial Water Week. Of course, this is your official place to celebrate each and every day of Industrial Water Week. So that is Pre-Treatment Monday, that is Boiler Tuesday, that is Cooling Wednesday, that is Wastewater Thursday, and of course, Careers Friday. Nation, we're going to have a brand new episode, and we're also going to have a brand new Detective H2O each and every day. This was quite the undertaking for all that are involved. James, thank you so much for all the extra work you did this year to make this happen. So you're not going to want to miss any one of those episodes. Now, they are not just brand new episodes. They are inclusive of brand new guest voices. And Nation, you should know every single voice because they've been on this podcast before. And we're going to have some fun. We're actually on our social media. After each episode has aired, we're going to see who can name that guest voice. And I think you are really going to enjoy celebrating Industrial Water Week with us this year. So please mark your calendars. It starts off on October 6th, and we're going to have a brand new episode each and every day that week. And I hope that you plan on doing something each and every day. Of course, we ask you to hashtag your photos of you with your favorite people, with your favorite equipment, to hashtag IWW25 and hashtag scaling up H2O, so we can all celebrate together. And when we do that, I've heard so many times that people will say, that was so cool to see how many people posted a picture in front of a boiler. I was in front of a boiler today, and I didn't feel as isolated as I normally feel because I'm driving from account to account, and then I have to go to a boiler room where there is absolutely nobody in there except for the boiler and me. So Nation, please take advantage of that. And please make sure that you go to one of those hashtags and you look at some of the posts. It's really cool to see what everybody is doing. Now, we would not have Industrial Water Week without our friend James McDonald, and we would not have the next installment without our friend James McDonald. So here is a brand new What Do You Know?
Hello and welcome to What Do You Know? The game show where we find out what do you know about industrial water treatment, drop by drop. So pump up your brain, take out that test kit of knowledge, and prepare to answer this week's question on What Do You Know? Today's question is, what type of resin is primarily used in a sodium zeolite water softener? The type of resin primarily used in sodium zeolite water softeners is a strong acid cation resin, specifically in its sodium form. I'm James McDonald, and thanks for playing along with us. Stay tuned for next week's episode of What Do You Know?
Well, thank you, James. And Nation, so many people are keeping up with what conferences are taking place by listening to this podcast and by going to our events page on scalinguph2o.com. Here are a couple of events that you might want to check out. The Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies is having their conference in Austin, Texas, October 26th through 29th. If you want more information about that, we will have that on our events page. Also, while you're there, check out Greenbuild. Folks, this is a huge conference. I know we have lots of lead APs, lots of lead GAs that listen to this conference. Those are lead accredited professionals, if you don't know those designations. But Greenbuild is the conference around all of that. And it is, I think, the largest conference or one of the largest conference that we do in the United States. That's taking place November 4th through 7th. And it is going to be in Los Angeles, California, in their convention center. And folks, this is something I think everybody has to do at least once. You will see so many things, so many neat emerging ideas all around how do we keep the resources that we have? How do we do a better job with that? How do we save money so we don't have to buy more things? How do we get things to work together so things are more efficient? There's just so much there. So we're going to have all that information for you on our events page. And I only mentioned 2 today, but trust me, there are hundreds out there on our events page. So make sure you are making a habit to go to our events page when you are planning your calendar so you know what you want to go and do. And Nation, I would hate it if you always wanted to go to Greenbuild and you live in Los Angeles and you didn't know that it was taking place. So make sure you're checking, make sure you're listening to this podcast, and make sure you are making plans to go to the conferences that are going to help you learn new things and meet new people. Speaking of new people, I was introduced by one of our Scaling Up Nation members. And Nation, here is that interview. My lab partner today is Christine McHugh of White Strand Development. Christine, welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Thank you for having me.
We are delighted to have you. And before we get started, do you mind telling the Scaling Up Nation a bit about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Christine McHugh, CEO of White Strand Development. We really are a net zero consultancy practice. Also the co-founder of AMPT Advisory and specializing in capital planning and asset management.
So one of the things we're going to be talking about today is the concept around smart cities. Do you mind defining what a smart city is?
Based on my experience, I think a smart city is a networked city. I'm simplifying it. It's very complicated, but it's really looking at health and wellness, energy, waste, water, energy, but through the lens of technology that can measure all of the above.
How do you envision the future of sustainability and water management when it comes to smart cities?
I believe that we could use technology like digital twin technology or decentralized water treatment plants, AI-driven, blockchain-driven technology to correlate our data to make it more efficient, our usage patterns, but also for safer drinking water and the water environment to be safer.
There's so much information out there, and I think until recently, municipalities were really not sharing their data with each other. Now that they are sharing data with each other through the technologies that we're going to talk about today, I can only imagine that's going to make it better for everybody.
I agree.
What role do you see the Internet of Things and artificial intelligence playing in smart water quality management, particularly around Legionella control?
Legionella control is totally a focus of mine, so I appreciate the specific question. I really think that what's going on now is we're thinking about risk and technology differently. And when we're thinking about temperature and water stagnation and disinfectant, What was going on currently is more where we're getting a reading of a specific place and time. Technology will give us real time patterns. And by just having that pattern recognition, we have power to be more proactive with how our water system reacts to those patterns.
How have you personally seen things improve in this area?
I am seeing, and I think it's refreshing, I'm thinking of water technology and risk reduction as a strategy. And yes, we can talk about leak detection, Legionella, but all of these things reduce risk, both in our resource as water, but also in human health and wellness. So I think there's an alignment or a new alignment that's happening between insurance tech and property tech that has yet to kind of be fully evolved. I think that that's where I'm the most excited about where this is going because there's a lot of, yes, waste and water, is a concern. But I think the human health and wellness, Legionella specifically, but there's different water contaminants that is things that we should be looking at proactively as trying to protect citizens, and that's also ties into your insurance. So I think property insurance firms, savvy property insurance firms, are looking to align property technology risk reduction with prop tech.
How can real time monitoring technologies improve the efficiency and safety of building water systems?
I think advanced safety falls into like temperature alerts. We can have continual disinfectant levels that are ensuring constant protection, automatic detection of unauthorized backflow. These are the type of things that a algorithm does proactively. And then the alerts are sent so that humans are overseeing the whole process and can jump in as needed.
So, if there were stagnation, an alarm would go off, somebody would be notified, and they know they need to flush the system or something needs to be activated.
Yes. And I think we're also seeing smart fixtures that automatically have flushing built into them only when necessary. That's something with technology that I'm seeing improved efficiencies, but that's built into the fixture. But then we have detection, which is leak detection, or even identifying energy waste in heating and cooling systems that becomes part of a data set that is gathered from looking at these sensors and they're either preset, like a smart fixture is flushing, or they're detecting and automatically, just say pressure sensors or flow sensors, are seeing that there's stagnation and they're only flushing when necessary, which currently people are flushing when they think they have to flush. So there might be a more of a waste of water associated with that. So this gives a more pointed view or lens to that methodology.
Christine, I was in a facility not too terribly long ago, and they had automatic flush valves on some fixtures, and the lights were also on timers. So when they didn't have any motion, they went out. Well, what powered these flushing fixtures was a little solar tray, and they, of course, were not working. So they were entirely pointless. So sometimes I'm sure, as you're going to tell the Scaling Up Nation, the technology can be there, but if we're not using it properly, it's not going to do what we need it to do.
And I think that's part of why you need a human that's really helping to navigate how these technologies are set up. I think what I've been doing is almost setting up a hierarchy of sensors and how they react to each other and zoning them so that you know that if a light fixture goes out that the VAV boxes go into like a sleep mode. So yes, it's great we're saving energy because the lights go off, but we're also now reducing airflow in that area, which is also on the air conditioning side, reducing energy as well, rather than everything to be siloed. But your example, should have been caught, but the reality is that a lot of decisions are made and it's not fully threaded with how sensors react to each other. So I think that's a takeaway.
So when somebody is trying to figure out how do I implement better technology, they, I assume, have to take an inventory of all these tools like we're talking about. So they're talking together, they're working together.
They are. And also, I'm finding that there's some duplication. I'm going to use the combo thermostats and the IAQ sensors as an example. There's a lot of duplicate sensor data, and some of it's going to the BMS, some of it's going to a cloud. How long do we keep it? What happens, in different zones where you get different readings because there's less IAQ sensors than thermostats. I think making sure first of all, that you don't need, if we already have an occupancy sensor built into a smart television, do we need in a small conference room another occupancy sensor in the ceiling? We have an occupancy sensor in the light fixture. Do we need to necessarily have a standalone occupancy sensor? I think that these are questions that it also plays into the budget, but you're really asking how much it costs for installation, maintenance, how long, you keep the data and where is that data held, and making sure people that are reporting on the data have the right data and they're not conflicting with each other. If you have energy information that is coming off the BMS and then that's being run by the engineers, the building operations or facilities team, and then you have somebody on the ESG side or sustainability running similar data off of a cloud data set, which is coming off of different sensors, you potentially have different readings. And that, I think, gives mixed messages to leadership when they see reports coming off of data sets from the same floor, the same area that are not aligned. So I think having an understanding of, I call it a hierarchy of sensors talking to each other and feeding reports so that everyone's looking at the same data. And that's air, energy, and water. And waste eventually. It's not quite there yet in the conversation, but yes, adding that to the mix.
Do you eventually see something like AI equalizing all that data and making better sense of it to whoever's getting the final report?
Yeah, what I think is, I think of it as a data lake, and each stakeholder, we already know the data or report data that they want. And we make sure that all the data is in the lake, and then the data set could be run by them anytime they want. But that it's aligned so that energy data across any stakeholder that's running the report is seeing the same data set. That's why the hierarchy of the data set needs to happen. And also to make sure that your information around this is not necessarily something a human is plugging in a reading. It's a real reading from a sensor.
What are some of the main challenges in implementing smart water management systems in existing urban infrastructures?
This is a good question. I think physical infrastructure is probably number one on my list. Aging pipes, limited access, for retrofitting. I think also inadequate documentation of the existing system. We've seen many times that as built, even in a newer building, don't get maintained and updated as work happens. So I would think that underneath the street in a city, large urban areas, that happens as well. So I think that as we dig in the physical limitations on the infrastructure, you have to have baseline information. And then, just like any as built, it has to be maintained. I do think there's a complexity to integration with legacy systems that will be challenging, and financial constraints, which are always, sometimes you don't know until you wind up with some integration issues that add to the budget. So, to me, it's physical infrastructure, integration, and financially. Those are kind of my top three.
The United States definitely has an aging water infrastructure issue in most cities. Do you think that right now, having the technology available and so many municipalities having to rebuild their systems, that's an opportunistic event?
I work globally. So I always think of aging infrastructure and I think of Europe, to be honest. And I think Europe is thinking differently and they have an older infrastructure than we do. So, yes, we have challenges. But when I look at Germany or Holland, who are doing very interesting things with water science and overcoming aged infrastructure issues, I think that I would follow their lead. So, yes, we still have to get a baseline information and get the right people working on it. But since Europe is working with older infrastructure than us and achieving a water science baseline and proactivity associated with this. I think that it's achievable with the right team.
And definitely Europe has an older system than we do. So that's a great way to look at that. Can you discuss some successful case studies of smart water quality management systems for Legionella control?
I think that the one that comes to mind when I think of Legionella in the U.S. at least, Virginia Tech did some work where they were reducing Legionella risk while decreasing water consumption, and it was based around a water management program, real-time monitoring, which I think is fantastic. I think it started in 2021, so it's one that I always kind of reference, and they had implemented a continuous chlorine monitoring at some key points and a digital twin for the campus water system that was looking at risk modeling. So I think that's one in the US. In Europe, again, Copenhagen is one that had IoT sensors that they used throughout their campus for hot water systems. This is at Copenhagen University Hospital, and it reduced the manual tests by 60% and achieved 100% compliance with the temperature requirements immediately. So I think that those type of things, again, with the right team, it's not just implementing, but it's training and maintenance contracts and educating and reporting and continuing to look at the data to make sure that there's no anomalies. And I think, like I said, Virginia Tech in the US, but also, there's quite a few case studies in Europe that people are implementing different sensors and, this is over campuses and they're very successful. So I foresee more of that as people understand and embrace this as an extension of their system and not just something they're not tracking.
Do you foresee that in the near future, a lot of these technologies are just going to be commonplace in future water management plans?
I do. I think that there's low hanging fruit with things like leak detection. I think that water quality will be paramount. I think that in certain areas, I live in New York City, so we're concerned about water, but it's not in a desert region that, is probably more concerned if you're in Phoenix or some of those type of areas. But I think that as people think about water and not just practices around their cooling equipment and being more efficient with those type of things, but also as health and safety. I think Legionella, the risk is there, and I think the cases are becoming better data on the amount of cases that are really out there because there's a lot of misdiagnosed cases, and people are sent home with what they think is pneumonia. And if now that there's the urine tests associated with Legionella, I think we'll have better number of cases. And I think with that will trigger a tighter look at the water science behind it. And I think anybody with not just hospitals and nursing homes, but, you know, condos and co-ops that have maybe aged communities should be proactive. And I think that their insurance provider should incentivize water science being part of their normal, I'm going to say, smart building system and reportability to help, kind of highlight how they're different than maybe some of their competitors in some of these senior communities.
How do you think industrial water treaters should have conversations with their clients on that very topic?
From my research, because I'm on the board for ASHRAE for New York City, and I've been kind of probing around Legionella for quite some time with the ASHRAE board folks nationally. And I was really focused on cooling tower and dead legs, to be honest. And come to find out that the highest outbreak are associated with water main breaks. And it made me think about smart building and smart city differently. So I think that the utility companies and the people that are having transparency to water main breaks from the utilities, I think should trigger an alert to certain high risk clients, which would be like hospitals, nursing homes, daycare centers, things like that. So I would go back to those providers and explain that as the challenge and ask them how they could work with us in risk reduction, knowing that there is a heightened awareness around, as an example, water main breaks. And I think it's an evolution of a conversation, but that's to use a real example. Of course, I would want on the inside of building flow sensors or pressure sensors inside the building so the building would know if there was such an event. But I'd like to see a proactiveness on the utilities, the water utility side, with them sharing data and information, which I think will come, but we're not quite there yet.
Before we dive deeper into our interview, we're going to take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors. Hey there, Scaling Up Nation. Today, I want to talk about a powerful ally in the fight against biofilm, AMSA. Here's the bottom line. Biocides alone just aren't enough to control biofilm. That's why AMSA's R&D team designed BCP products to work alongside biocides to create an effective biofilm control program. Whether you're dealing with oxidizing or non-oxidizing biocides, AMSA products are compatible and enhance their performance, helping to keep your system under control. But that's not all. AMSA BCP products are versatile. They can be used for aggressive offline cleaning, gradual online cleaning, or as part of a regular water treatment program to keep your cooling water systems clean long-term. Whether you're dosing in a slug-based or continuous program, AMSA has you covered. AMSA products are your secret weapon in systems prone to fouling, like those with high ammonia levels, hydrocarbon contamination, or reclaimed water. Because as we all know, AMSA's chemistry helps clean it up and keep it clean. Scaling Up Nation, if you're ready to take your biofilm control program to the next level, head over to scalinguph2o.com/AMSA to learn more about their innovative biofilm control program solutions. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/AMSA. Trust me, your cooling water systems will thank you. Let's jump back in right where we left off. Christine, we can't talk about connecting things to the internet and making the machines aware without thinking of something like Terminator or Skynet. So we got to talk about cybersecurity. Are there risks associated with putting all of these things online, even though we do get some benefit out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, cybersecurity is a real thing. When I was doing a little more back research on cybersecurity and water prior to this podcast, I had found that in Florida there was someone had broken into somebody's water system and messed with their settings, which increased their water health, and a human picked up on it right away, and it was mitigated. But I think it's scary, and I think when you're talking about bioterrorism and things like that, that your water system has to be safe, and it's just like your air; it can't be contaminated. So I think primary risk around cybersecurity is really remote access pathways to the operational technology and data sets. And I think the vulnerability around IoT devices is paramount, and integrating with the IT systems and cross contaminating could also be a risk issue. So I think there's a few things there. And again, you need a cyber consultant that's really savvy when it comes to urban planning and nuances with smart city talking to smart buildings. I think a lot of cyber is really looking at standalone clients or buildings or portfolios. There's people that just specialize in smart city cyber, and water being part of that. But I think making sure the smart building and the smart city folks on the cybersecurity specific to water, it's everything but water, are talking to each other. And again, with alerts and alarms, I think making sure there's transparency when there's an issue.
Christine, I can't help but think several years ago, Target had their data breach where a lot of credit card information got out, and they had so many things in place to prevent that, but not on their HVAC system, and that's where they actually got into their system. Are there things that we should be doing so we don't have a similar experience?
Yes. we really should be trying to break into our own system or hiring people to break into our own system, because those are the folks that are going to find the weak link. The bad guys will find it as well. But what happens is people come in and they touch a part of your system and step away. And sometimes people aren't looking at the broader intersections with how different siloed systems talk to each other. And that's an example. And it's happened before. But you look at even fish tanks have had wireless sensors that people have, backdoored in. I've even seen clients with outdoor terraces that they struggle with if someone wants to work outside on their laptop. And how are they getting to their internet? Are they inside the firewall or outside the firewall? I've seen mistakes happen by very large corporate clients in simple things like that. And I think that you just need somebody who has a broad lens and is super critical. And I think you have to look at, maybe beta testing some of your spaces and having somebody, hiring somebody, and people do this where they come in and they will hack your system. And then you go and fill that hole. But that's part of having the right cybersecurity consultant. And they see risks where the rest of us don't understand how they're piggybacked on top of each other.
How do you foresee the private and public sector working together to implement smart water management solutions?
With regards to public and private partnership, I think it's an essential catalyst for water innovation. Some key mechanisms I feel to structure it would be innovation funding structured, and I think risk share models. I think Singapore is using a public utility board partnership with technology companies that are collaborating, and they're creating pathways for innovation while maintaining public oversight for essential services, including water. So I find that that's intriguing. And again, looking to Singapore, Tokyo, Copenhagen, there's a few folks that are kind of thinking like this already. But then I think there's knowledge and capability integration where, to me, the public sector is providing the regulatory framework and infrastructure access. Then I think of the private sector as contributing the technology expertise or technological expertise and the investment capital. And then there's an academic institution element that I feel supports research and validation. So when I think of public-private partnership, I also like to have an academic institution aligned with that because I think that that's the right framework to kind of set it up.
Christine, what do you feel the missing link is to really making sure that this is successful?
Performance metrics are really how you're going to measure success. So I think baseline information, a lot of times we do this even with energy modeling, where you go in and energy model a space. But again, it's a point in time. And then no one looks at real time data. What I'm envisioning for the future of water technology is real time monitoring. So, again, we would need to have as builts for the infrastructure updated and kept updated. So, I think that that's part of like a checks and balance. But I think the technology exists for this to be implemented immediately. Maybe the biofilters are something that is still evolving. When I think of Legionella and cooling towers, for instance, I'm thinking about environmental readings of air temperature and humidity readings and wind. And then I'm thinking of freshwater intake into the system and circulation rates and pH levels, water temperature. And to me, I had spoken to an insurance team once, and we were talking specific to Legionella, and they called Legionella kind of the Achilles heel of the property insurance industry because they were referencing that they felt that it was unknown, because it takes just say 7 to 10 days when you send a sample out for it to grow. So you really don't get that real time reading that you need. And I think as technology advances and you can be proactive looking at an isolated data set, I think you're going to have a team on site that is seeing similarities with maybe when they've tested positive, even if the reading comes back 7 or 10 days later, they know that they were positive because they're looking at the data set. Then they could proactively see that same data set in the future and B, increasing circulation rates or slightly increasing pH levels to reduce risk. And I think that if there were cases of outbreaks associated that were tied back to that cooling tower, and then it went, into a lawsuit, that building would have the data sets associated with that piece of large equipment, the cooling tower, that would help protect them and say, we've done everything humanly possible. We saw risk increase, and this is what we did to reduce. And we used more energy. We, used more water, but we reduced risk. And I think at some point, that's the only thing you can do humanly possible.
How can smart water management systems help cities become more resilient in things such as droughts and flooding?
I think that smart water systems through adaptive management and enhanced response will definitely be a solution for resiliency to things like drought. Real time consumption monitoring, specifically, as well as leak detection and smart pressure management. These are things that will make your system more efficient. So when water is less available, you will be wasting less of it. I do think that flood management is another thing with stormwater sensors. I know we haven't touched on that, but I have a guy that's in Israel that's doing some really transformative work with stormwater and wastewater and making sure that that monitoring is aligned. And they put sensors in 6 or 7 years ago, and a resort area that they had overflow of wastewater going into the Mediterranean. And since they put the sensors in, they have not had any contamination. And I could get you a link to that work as well if you'd like to share it. But I think people are doing this, and we're talking about floods and droughts, but floods, for instance, cause more contaminants. And that's why I'm touching on wastewater potentially overflowing into because of stormwater systems. And all this being monitored proactively helps you control those type of risks.
Looking ahead, what emerging technologies or trends do you think will have the biggest impact on sustainable water management in smart cities?
Things that are happening now that intrigue me the most have to do with the material science side of things. And I think there's things like self healing pipes and some technologies that are built in that enable biometrics and smart surfaces that capture and filter water. I just think the material science side is fascinating and there's a lot happening there. So that's something to watch. The biological system side with living water infrastructure, with natural purification has always been out there. And I think some of the, municipalities are using things like that. So I feel like that's one to watch. And the biosensors, which I touched on with regards to the cooling tower, I think that those are evolving and kind of fascinating to see how the advancements that have evolved could be used in this kind of application. I also think of self managing water networks that require minimal human intervention. And I know it's early days, but we talk about robotics and drone based monitoring, things like that, that are doing the inspection of remote infrastructure. And then, to have that on an AI orchestrated water system, again, with notifications and alerts and alarms set up to the team back at home base, just to say this is what's going on so that humans are overseeing the whole thing. And also, making sure that they're testing that these systems are working properly and doing some random deep dives into some of these. But I think creating a water system that's more like a natural ecosystem than a traditional infrastructure that's self-regulating, has adaptive capabilities and maximizes both efficiency and resiliency is really where the water science is going for smart cities.
If someone wants to learn more about the work that you do or follow up on some of the topics that we talked about today, what should they do?
Well, my contact information is included in the show notes on the show notes page. So they can feel free to reach out to me there. I'm on LinkedIn as well as my website, or they can email me and all my contacts on the show notes page.
We will make sure that that's very easy to find. Christine, I got a few more lightning round questions for you if you're ready to advance to that round.
Yes, shoot.
Christine, if you could go back in time and talk to your former self on your very first day as a property technology consultant, what advice would you give yourself?
That's a good question. I think that when I look back, if when I got out of school a couple of decades ago, if the technology were what it is today, I think that what I would want to tell myself is to not feel restricted, to not be siloed with the data. If I see something, I should be bringing it up and really probing into some concerns because I think some of the systems, water, air, energy, are disconnected right now. And the way we read the data on them is very siloed. So I think by looking at water, even at water cooling for infrastructure solution, I think that we should be challenging more. And that's where I hope that if I were a younger person coming out of school now, that would be the message I would say to them. Just don't get in your lane and drive. Yes, learn, but do be inquisitive and to be a lifelong learner. If you're really into water science or air quality, a lot of these things commingle in a building. And I think if you're a water science person, but you understand that we use water to cool mechanical system, there's courses and things you could do to just become a little more updated on the systems. And it may help you understand and create a better solution. And I think as we spread from smart building into smart city space, I think that there's really impactful changes that people that are coming out of school now, we've conformed and we're in the box. A lot of us are. And I'm hopeful that young people today come out asking more questions and challenging and with ideas. And I think that that's the most powerful place we could be as people looking at property data, both smart city and smart building data sets.
What are the last few books that you've read?
I have to say, I'm going to say more articles online. I follow some less. Listen, prop tech is like a lightning right now. It's really, there's so much information out there. What I follow, and even free courses that I should be bringing up, the UN has a lot of free courses that you could take around circular economy and water. And I think that that's where I go to learn a lot of things that are broader than smart city because they're thinking globally and impactfully on environment. So I find them a resource. I would say to follow on LinkedIn has some very interesting. That's how I found you, for instance. You know, they have people that are really doing things that are thinking differently and sharing knowledge. So not necessarily books, but I would say that I'm following people that are setting policy in Europe and following them online and some of the newsletters associated with that. I look at, again, I'm looking at policy for Singapore, Australia, Tokyo, and Europe. And then as I'm solutioning for my clients globally, but it always has a layer for what's going on in the US. We put that information in front of them to say, listen, scope one and scope two emissions was required in Europe as of 2014. And it was just required in the US in 2024. People are talking about it here in the US like it's new. So a lot of times I look globally to see what people are doing. Because there's a lot of people that are already piloting things. And, why wouldn't we be looking there?
That's great advice. Christine, who do you want playing you in a movie?
You're stumping me here. I don't know, probably someone like Elle Fanning. I just feel like somebody that would be a younger, but I feel like she's fearless and she's, someone like that feels fresh, but maybe not.
Well, Christine, I want to thank you for coming on the Scaling Up podcast and sharing a little bit about what you do day to day. And maybe we might cross paths sometime in that day to day. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Christine, thanks again for coming on the podcast. And Nation, is the smart city term a term or a concept that you were familiar with before this episode? Maybe you were, maybe now you're thinking even more about it. Well, we're going to have all the resources, all of the things that Christine mentioned on our show notes page. But it's all driven around how do we get our data working better? Us as industrial water treaters, I think we do a great job of collecting data. I bet you there are companies out there that probably have 100 years worth of testing data on particular systems. But how good is the history if we're not putting that into some sort of action on a regular basis? And not to mention, there are so many devices out there, so many sensors that can tell us a lot of these test results in real time. So now, if we can bring together our historical analysis with the new technology and real-time reporting, well, folks, we've got executionable data that we can do something with. And there's so many companies out there that are harnessing this technologies. There's so many vendors that are coming into the water treatment space to help expose us to that technology to try to use our data so we can make better decisions. So we're going to try to put as much information as we can on our show notes page. And of course, we've interviewed many people around some of these devices and how people are using information. So please use this podcast as a resource for what are you going to do next? How are you going to take this information and do something with it? Because let's face it, if you don't do that, somebody else already is, and you don't want somebody or some other company to pass you by. You don't want a customer to say, we really want to implement this for all of these great reasons, and we want you to help us, and you don't know what they're talking about. What's even worse, it's not bad to not know what they're talking about. What's even worse is to not know where to go find how you can research it. So nation, I'm trying to make that as easy as possible for you. And I am hoping that you are taking the information that you learned from this and every podcast to be your ticket to learn even more. Now, if you know somebody that I need to interview, if you know of a new product that I need to look at and bring on this podcast, please go to scalinguph2o.com, go over to our show ideas page, and let us know who or what that is. And Nation, if you are at WEFTech this week, please let the people of WEFTech know that we have an amazing water treatment podcast. And if you find something at that show, please let me know what that is, because we are always looking for new ideas. Thank you for listening to today's show, and we're going to have a brand new show for you next Friday. In the meantime, make sure you're trying something new and you're keeping up with all the new things out there. Have a great week, folks. Want to ensure you're fully prepared for the Certified Water Technologist examination? Our CWT prep course provides you with the tools and knowledge you need, from detailed study guides to a 100-question practice exam. We've got you covered. Visit scalinguph2o.com/CWT prep and start your journey to certification.